Welcome to the Rec Room with Mandy and Mio, a podcast about books and the people who write them. Welcome, everyone. You know what this show is. This is a podcast called The Rec Room with Mandy and Mio, where we ask the question, when does a story become required reading? In each episode, we take popular authors of the day and review select pieces of their work just to see how close these writers get. I stumbled there. Writers, how they get, how close they get, these writers, to the sweet spot between mainstream breakout success and traditional literary sensibility.
He did it.
Yeah, I did it. I'm Mia.
I'm Mandy.
And this is The Rec Room, a podcast.
Yeah.
I feel like I keep stumbling over that nowadays because like I every time I read it, I know that we're like low-key lying. And not only that, like I just realized like maybe a week or two ago that we haven't changed the intro. So even the intro that I'm tagging to this episode is going to say a podcast about books and the people who write them, which has not been true for the last four episodes.
For like a month. Yeah.
So I feel like
this
and we're liars.
Yeah. Oh, like a liar. That's what we've been doing. But today we are not liars, my friends.
No, we're not. Thank you for that.
There is no lies here.
We are talking about a book that we've been hyping up. Not low-key. Like we've been
hyping I was like, internally. Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's been very big for us here at the Rec Room. But but like at least we announced ahead of time that we would be doing 3 novel-length works here on the summer semester of our podcast. And today we're talking about the first of those picks, which is the novel The Idiot, not by Fyodor Dostoevsky, but by Elif Batuman.
Hells
novelist Elif Batuman. And I picked it because I remembered reading this around the time it came out, which was 2017. Mm-hmm. And like it was 2017. Yeah, it was 2017. And then I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this book. And I remember reading it.
2017, you had just graduated your master's a year earlier.
No, I had graduated in 2015. I feel like we keep
Oh, joke lang.
No, I graduated in 2015. And I remember because I was reading it in the context of a vacation that I was taking with my family. It's the thing that's particularly memorable to me is that it was the book I remembered enjoying the most on that vacation. And part of my litmus paper test for that was that I couldn't sleep on the plane going home. So I opened it and I ended up finishing like 2/3 of the book in one go. And like that night.
Wait, was this the Japan vacation? Now I'm realizing.
This is when we went to Europe. So I was like really surprised. I was like, whoa, like not that that's never happened to me before, but like it was one of those things where I'm like, this rarely happens. Where I mean, like, granted, I am on a plane, but like, the attention it takes for me to give to like a novel that, especially one that presents itself in like fragmentary vignettes, as this one does, kind of.
Yes.
Like it doesn't often like hold my attention for very long, and like I really have to like treat it as a fragmentary. Like I'm almost like going back to it time and time again to hear different cuento about somebody's experience. But like here now, it's like no, okay. I'm all in on this book. I need to know what happens. So I remember reading it all the way through then, and then 4 years later, I decided we should cover it
on a podcast.
On our podcast. This is your first time reading it. How did you enjoy it?
Yes, I was very surprised because I didn't expect it to like stylistically to be like that. That was the first thing that caught me. I was like, oh, shit. It was, I had no idea what it's about. So I went into this really blind. Because I had never heard of it, actually, until you brought it up that you wanted to do it. And then I didn't know what to expect also. And I was also thinking of, like, Dostoevsky's book, I guess. So I was like, okay, maybe this is going to be more formal. Yeah. And also, given then that my novel choice is very old.
Yeah.
so I kind of was like, is this also going to be super old? So in my head, I was mentally preparing, like the way you would prepare yourself for a class, I guess, which is the point of this whole podcast.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, okay, I have to get my like academe brain on or something like that.
Yeah.
Or like my study brain on. And then when I read the first part, I literally, like the first sentence, I was like, oh, I can chill out. This is fine. This is totally fine. But I super enjoyed this. I thought it was, so what I was telling Mio before this was that I actually did a half and half of this. I read it via ebook, and then like I also read it. I had also listened to it as an audiobook, and it was narrated by the author herself, and I really liked it. Her voice is so calming. Right? It was really nice. Yeah. I love listening to interviews of her. Yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons why I had to do half and half, because I would fall asleep. Oh. Because it was like, but not like, oh, I'm so bored, but it was like really like
Elif Batuman, so ASMR.
yeah, kind of like she was so chill, because she didn't really do voices, but when she would like express certain parts, like for dialogue, I thought she was very cute about it, and I really liked it. And book-wise, it was easy. I have a hard time with ebooks, I'm going to have to say. So I had to read this through an ebook. And do you have the physical of this?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
It was the one that I read on the plane.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. But like with me, it's kind of hard. But then for some reason with this, it wasn't. Especially, I had it on my phone, and I was able to read it through there. And I was able to get through it better that way. But like when we were doing other books, for some reason I couldn't, it wasn't the same. I don't know what about it. Maybe it's also like her style that made it easier for me to read it in the same pace that I would usually read a fanfic on my phone. And I was kind of like, oh, I got through so much of this na pala. And then anyway, that
okay.
So, I thank you for that's us premeditating our
response to this, because I still like, and I remember I was even kind of warning you. I was like, I remember the first part being a little scattered, but I swear to God, like I was like trying to convince you, like it comes together, especially in the latter half, like it picks up so hard, like.
Yeah, and can you imagine you telling me that, and in my head, I'm thinking that this is a book from 1852. So, in my head, I was like, okay, I'll just do it.
That's what most guys say, I guess, about Dostoevsky.
Man.
Anyway, but
that idiot.
I'm glad you enjoyed it then. Briefly, broadly speaking, so this novel, as you alluded to, is about a young woman who's going through her first year of college. It's basically her first year of college. That whole experience of her first year, including the summer that she goes on in Hungary. And the circumstances that lead to that being her summer experience, and the things that she learns along the way. It's based heavily on her personal experience. It's semi-autobiographical, which is why I think more than ever it's necessary to go into like the context of who Elif Batuman is, and like what she grew up through, just so you get a sense of like how she kind of divides her persona. I mean, not divides, that's a weird way of saying it, but like how she sort of separates or like distances herself, while also like relying heavily on the experiences that she had to build this novel. And that even extends
kind of
to
like,
how... Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Kind of like...
No, I was going to say, kind of like... Well, for me, kind of like what we were saying before about Zadie.
Oh, okay.
I guess.
Yeah, in a way. Like, she's the only other one, I think, who has had like a similar... Because Sally and... Maddie,
yeah, definitely no. Especially Maddie. That would be crazy. That would be insane.
I grew up.
Like, no. I was isolated on an island. I was isolated on Homer. He and I
didn't know Homer. Anyway,
I actually helped transcribe the Iliad.
A lot of people don't know this. Homer was
that's true.
Many people.
Like,
anyway.
Okay, go.
Yeah, but I think we should definitely go into the context of her life. Elif Batuman was born 1977, possibly. According to the internet, it's June 7, which means her birthday's coming up. Elif, if you're listening to this episode, happy birthday, advance!
Happy birthday! Happy birthday, if you care.
Which makes her a
Gemini.
Ooh, interesting.
Elif, if you're listening, I just want to know, are you okay? This Gemini season has not been kind. So I hope she's okay. I have a Gemini moon, so that's kind of why I've been suffering. But I hope her Gemini sun has been okay.
Okay, I'm actually curious about this. I want to ask this now. Do you feel like her Gemini-ness translates to her writing? Like how do you think it?
Oh yeah, based on what you literally just mentioned, na parang she can separate herself or her own experiences while still relying on them to put out something. That seems very
kind of like
like I know that we kind of just I just mentioned that Zadie does that too, but the way Zadie does it is so different.
Right.
It like obviously it's a similar concept, but then with Elif, it is more clear to me
that she is making a twin.
Yes, right? Kind of. Yeah, or
Yeah.
part of like, this is me fictionalizing, very heavily fictionalizing something. Not super heavily, sorry. Yeah. Zadie is more like, this is me heavily fictionalizing something that I've experienced.
Right.
Whereas with Elif, it's more like, I'm gonna try and put as much of me in this.
Yeah.
Without it being me pa din.
Right. And in fact,
which I think is a very... Go ahead. No.
Sorry. There was like an article where she was saying that like in terms of writing her experiences, like she almost like she doesn't care about the like having to identify which details are the ones that really happened to her. So I think that that sort of like lack of like she doesn't really care about it. You know what I mean? Like if people look at it and say, "Oh, this is what really happened to her." I mean, like for her, like that's part of the point is like her being able to write that experience out. She is a Turkish American writer. Her parents were Turkish immigrants who brought her. She was born in New York, and then they had her. She grew up in New Jersey, and then from a very early time in her life, she knew she wanted to be a writer. And as she was like growing up, she like sort of realized like, okay, part of being a writer is like I have to be open to everything. And she was saying like this is part of what it feels like to be like the children of immigrants, because she does not have like a sense of what is normal and what is not normal, because she is growing up with that sense of alienation with the society that she's in. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, so she's like very conscious of like, that's weird. I don't know why people don't point that out. And you know, that's something that's very evident in her writing. But it's also like the sense of like her parents. Like I was listening to the interview she does on the podcast Other People, where she was saying that like her parents, who are sort of like these overachievers in science, like they kind of like implicitly like drove this sense of wanting to achieve as well. You know how parents are. Parents are.
Yeah. And then it was like POC parents. Yeah.
And like so they had sacrificed a lot for her, and they had tried as much as possible.
Is she an only child?
I think so, yeah. And like they had tried as much as possible to get her opportunities to do what nobody else in their family did. So like presumably she's the first person in her family to study at no less than Harvard.
Right?
Yeah. And so she had to like open herself up to everything as much as possible, which like informs a lot of the actions that happen in this book, where she's kind of just like,
especially the beginning.
Yeah, and she's like saying yes to a lot of things, and she's sort of just like being like, yeah, I'll take this class because this is something I'm generally interested in. And I think like even to the point of like her like later in the book when she goes to Hungary, like that's propelled by her saying yes to something that she doesn't really give that much thought to, like
know about.
Like she's just like, yeah, okay, I'll go to Hungary for the summer, basically.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so she went to Harvard, and then she'll after her undergraduate, she kept going until she got her PhD in comparative literature from Stanford, which is where she was teaching between 2007 and 2010. She was also first published in the magazine N+1, which was started by her friends in Harvard. And then after that, she started writing for The New Yorker. in 2006, where she became a staff writer a few years later. The same year that she became a staff writer, 2010, was the year that her first book, The Possessed, came out. And it's like this collection of essays about Russian literature and the people who read them. But I've read some of the essays in this book. I've read like the introductory essay numerous times, but the book is really, it's a good read as well. Like she has like an essay there about like there's a literary conference for the writer Isaac Babel, and then it's like she's like investigating she's like sort of observing all the different groups who come to kind of like deconstruct Isaac Babel. And like all of them are from different walks of life, so you get the sense of how this one writer affected all these lives. And then she has also like another essay later about how she tries to investigate, like, was Tolstoy murdered? Check out on BuzzFeed Unsolved. like
was he murdered?
Yeah, like
on the train station.
Yeah, like there's a popular theory apparently that Tolstoy was murdered. So she like went to like see, like, is there any truth to that? And then like it came out in the book.
Wow.
So, but like the first,
I want to read that one.
Yeah, the first essay from that book though is actually like a very good like roadmap for her second book, The Idiot, which we're talking about today, because you see in that first essay so much of what happens in The Idiot, she explains happened to herself in real life. So like one thing that she mentioned obviously is going to Harvard, but like she explains like at some point she decided to take a Russian class, and they had to read a story, like a continuing story called The Story of Vera, which in the novel becomes Nina in Siberia. There's also a part where she talks about getting stuck after a canoe ride and like waiting for her companion, but like feeling lost. And then she also says that she took some like Russian class. Not Russian language classes, philosophy of language classes, where the guiding principle was like, imagine you have to explain language to a Martian. Like, what's the system? What's the best way to explain your experience to that Martian, which also appears in the novel. But as I was saying earlier, like she's experienced, she's like interested in exploring her experience and the relationships that she has, to the point that she doesn't really care about like how, like pointing out to people like this has really happened to me. So like she doesn't really call attention to it. And I think that extends also to the storytelling style of this novel, because like the interesting detail I found out about how she wrote this book is that she had actually written a first draft of it many years ago in 2000, 2001. So she was like 23. She was like, you know, just starting out after graduating from Harvard, and she was a graduate student, I think, or she was about to consider going to graduate school. And then she was looking back at her experience as an 18-year-old as a freshman, and she was like, man, I was so dumb. Like, what was I doing? And she wrote like a very like cynical novel about her being an 18-year-old in Harvard and like all the experiences she went through. And then from time to time, she would interject with this 23-year-old voice who'd say, little did I know that I, like, you know, she was like trying to like highlight the fact, like, yeah, I'm so much smarter than this idiot over here. So like, you know, like I have to tell you that person is an idiot, but I'm much smarter now. And so that was the first draft of The Idiot that she wrote when she was 23. And then she like put it away. And then like 15 years later, while she was writing for The New Yorker, she got a book contract to write a novel about being a journalist in Turkey, writing for a New Yorker like publication. And the thing was that she kept feeling like she had to write about the backstories of each character all the way up until they were in college. And as she was writing that, she was like, wait, I've written something, like I've written hundreds of thousands of words about being in college. Why don't I just get from that? And then, so then that's when she went back to that first draft, and she was reading it, and she was like...
And then she was like...
she was basically like, oh, this is good. Like, I mean, like, and like, you see that, like, it's different stages of, like, observing herself. Like, there's her as the 18-year-old, there's her as the 23-year-old commenting on it very cynically, but then there's her revisiting it again years later as a 38-year-old who like now sees this novel as a historical novel because like obviously we've moved on from email, and like she had written the first draft of the book as 9/11 as it was coming about.
Yeah.
And then like the thing that she observed as she was like rewriting it or rereading it was that she liked what was happening to the 18-year-old more than she liked what the 23-year-old was saying. So she was like, I'm actually more moved by this. I'm going to cut out all the 23-year-old bits and just keep the 18-year-old bits and I'll call it the idiot. And and like the like my whole like take on that is that while you're reading, I don't know if like did you
That's also very Gemini.
Oh, really?
Like for her to be all like she wrote these two phases of life and then realized that one was kind of more interesting than the other, and then she's just like, I'll just go with that other one.
Oh, okay.
I feel like that's a very intuitive thing of like being a Gemini, I guess, because you can see both sides of things very clearly, and then you can see which would work for you better.
Okay.
Not necessarily just in writing, but like in like life and stuff, and so she applied that in a certain way. Wala lang. Yeah.
Okay, so, that's actually very insightful. I didn't know that at all about Gemini. Even though she removes the 23-year-old aspects of that first draft, there is still this undercurrent of an older voice telling the story. Did you ever feel that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she sounded very mature.
Right. Yeah.
And in that part, in the first part, when she has to say her age for the first time, like, you know she's a freshman, obviously, because she talks about, like, moving in, and it's like, oh, college is so different. Yeah. But in that part where that one teacher is like, how old are you anyway? And she's just like, 18. That was the first time I was like, oh.
Yeah. Oh, she's only 18.
Okay. Yeah, she... All right. Move on.
Anyway, so so that like it becomes clear that there is an older voice that's writing, and I think that's one of the things that really drew me back to this novel, is knowing that there is a voice that's sympathetic but not necessarily forgiving to the younger self. And I mean, like,
but nor is it condescending.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, it's called the idiot and stuff, and she gets called out for doing really stupid things. Pero it's like laying it out in such a way that this is a learning thing that everyone kind of goes through in college. Yeah.
And I mean, like, I guess, like, in terms of, like, revisiting this novel at, like, this age, we're now in our late 20s, approaching our 30s, where it now is starting to feel
Jesus.
like, I mean... Whoa. But, like, I mean, it's starting to feel like, you know, college is, like, now a distant reality. Like,
it really,
diba?
I was actually thinking about that recently. Sorry if I can
go ahead.
Because it was two of my really good friends from high school share the same birthday, and which was yesterday, or the day before. Yeah, thank you. They're both Geminis also. And I was thinking, like, oh, I've known them since I was 14. And both of them just turned 26.
Yeah.
That's really wild to me. And I'm turning 27 this year, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And recently also, I was thinking about college, and I was like, oh, sometimes it seems so close, like we just ended. Yeah. But sometimes also, like, going through this, and her describing her first experiences with taking classes and stuff, I was also kind of imagining us.
Yeah.
And how we would, like, go across campus and go to different classes and stuff, but I also felt so far away from that whole experience. Right. Whereas, like, when we would read, for example, because this was so heavily also, like, it was so important to talk about, like, school. Whereas, like, in Sally Rooney's stuff, in conversations with friends, they're also clearly in, like, second year or something of college, but, like, that didn't really matter because what was more important was happening not in school. Right. And so you don't really feel the weight of, like, university on them, whereas here
I think that's a great comparison point, because, like, in those two novels, you don't feel the sense of the narrator making any judgments about the characters at all. And it feels very disconnected and objective, which, you know, it's very much part of like Sally's personality to do that.
Yeah.
But like it also like doesn't have the affectation that this novel eventually ends up having of like that sympathy for the younger idiot.
Right, correct. And especially I guess in conversations with friends is like towards the end, then it's more of like, okay, this is how we're gonna move on with our life.
Yeah.
But not necessarily in a way that's, as you said, was sympathetic. It was more like, okay, let's just move on now.
Yeah.
Like it's a bit more hard, I guess, in that sense. Whereas with this, it was really like it. Maybe this is also a Gemini thing. Na parang she very clearly wanted to map out all the events that led to the end. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Because in that sense, like, that's also where, like, to go back, like, now in retrospect, like, that's where the normal people ending falls a little flat. It's like, okay, like, Connell gets into the MFA program, and he, like, Marianne has to reckon with the fact that he's gonna leave, but she tells him that she'll always be there. And so it's, like, a very ambiguous state of, like, well, I guess the will they won't they will sort of continue, but in a way
continue
that they
forever.
Both appreciate, right? But like, like parang it's like, okay, but like you do want to see them get together, or like you do want them to like burst into like this larger confession that may be embarrassing, but at least it's honest, maybe. But and that's kind of what happens here in this book. But yun nga, it's like you don't ever feel the sense of shame that comes with that openness or with that honesty.
Correct.
And I mean, like you're saying about your looking back at your college experience, like even I myself, like a few nights ago, I remember like I was like I out of nowhere just started feeling sad. I was like, wow, I'm never gonna be able to go to the Cast Garden again and see that my friends are there just like waiting. Like, not that they'd expected me, but that they were just sitting there and I could join them. Like I'll never be able to go back to
the fact that you knew that we'd be there.
It was like it's weird knowing that was not available to me, and that's what made me sad. But then I also have to balance that with the notion that but you did a lot of dumb things in college. You weren't exactly like you weren't exactly Mr. Cool over there. You you know. You know what I mean? So like
hey, you were Mr. Cool to me.
Oh, thanks, buddy. That's what my mom tells me all the time.
Okay. Me and Tito Memel.
Okay, but like but like it's to the point sometimes I look back at like how I was in college and I can never forgive myself, even though I didn't do even though I didn't set out to do anything evil, but like it's just like, wow. Why did I raise these questions, or why did I behave this way in a class? Like that's such a very stupid way to act, right?
No.
And like true enough, like this is something that I remember we touched on in one of our like reading break episodes, possibly our Christmas episode, where I think the way it's kind of like followed me into my present age, into my present life, is that I've now like adopted the mood of like being overly critical about myself to the point that it becomes so difficult for me to like make a decision that will allow me to project myself to a larger public, like especially like social media. I find it so hard for me to post because I'm so overcritical of myself to the point that I already anticipate like years from now I'm gonna look back at the post and say that was a dumb post. Like I should never have like said that online. That's crazy.
Oh wow.
And especially within the fabric of this novel, because the internet is literally in its infancy.
It's literally the beginning of this novel is them explaining emails.
Yeah, she gets the email and I'm like, oh, this is the origin story of conversations with friends.
With friends? Yes, that's very true.
They end up sending memes to each other through email.
Exactly. And song links. Just to bring it back.
Right? But it's sort of that historicity of a personal experience. And like her offering the sense like, no, you can look at it in a way that's still critical, but not overly judgmental, because that's, I think, what she says with herself in the 23-year-old voice. But she, did not have that anymore when she became older and wiser, and she realized, like, I'm far enough that I can really forgive myself for that.
Yeah.
Which I guess is something I'm
correct.
trying to learn nowadays, I guess.
You got this, buddy.
Yeah.
Your tweets are funny. I just need you to know that now. Your tweets are so funny.
The tweets I send to you exclusively
That's,
are funny, at least.
That's true.
That's how I feel.
That's true. They're so funny. They're really good.
But yeah, so that is a bulk of like the ideas that are going into the idiot as she's writing them. And also like the things that I love about this book in a broad sense on an overview. And that's why it is no surprise that The Idiot was a finalist for the 2018 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. Currently, she's writing her third book, which is possibly the book that I mentioned earlier that she's trying to write about being a journalist in Turkey. But, we'll never know until it comes out, I guess.
It comes out?
Yeah, whenever that happens, we'll be waiting, Elif.
Hell yeah.
Should we get into the book?
Hells yeah.
Okay, so this book is divided into two parts, which makes it very easy for us to like examine structurally. The first part of the book is basically the school year, and the second part of it is her summer in Europe, basically her summer in Eastern Central Europe.
Here we go again.
Oh boy. Yeah, again, very
these damn summers in Europe.
We were saying again to like reference once more our first season. Like it's interesting how like almost all. I mean, arguably, you would say that
almost all.
I mean, arguably,
almost all.
But
involves some kind of European vacation. Even Maddie's.
Yeah, I was gonna
books.
say actually, literally, like they vacation in Turkey. So
That's literally it.
I mean, not for leisure, that's for
not
sure.
Not present day. Oh, that's
boy.
true. Sirs.
Yeah, so like
it was 12 years in Turkey.
Yeah, 12 years in Turkey. It was a long summer. For Patroclus and Achilles both. But like it features this travel that is not necessarily like it's definitely not like the summers
for
we've
leisure
seen in Sally's books where those ones for 100% sure it's just people lounging around or going to art galleries. And like you see her like kind of like living in this rural village in Hungary, where she spends time with different families and getting to know the community. So part one, as we mentioned, is about the school year, and it starts specifically very much dating this whole book and this era. Is she receives her email, and it like at the time it feels like this realm of infinite possibility, which I think the way that pays off throughout the first part is that it kind of reestablishes the epistolary form, like like how nobody writes letters to each other nowadays. But I think because of like technology, obviously we text each other nowadays. Like that's how far it's come. But like I think what the point of this opening is to say, like when email first hit, it felt like they reinvented the wheel in a way that was actually exciting. Like suddenly we could write letters to each other again in a way that felt like interesting and new.
Yes.
And like she's kind of like unsure of like what to do with this ability, especially as she's like meeting different people. Like she gets to know her roommates. She goes to she sees like one of her friends who she met like in late high school, and like Ralph, who she's like not sure about. Like she's not sure she's interested in him, or she's like, I think he's gay, but I'm not 100% sure. And then he kind of like refutes that implicitly. So she's like really not sure about him. And then also she like takes like her different classes. Like she knows that she wants to be a writer, so she takes a lot of classes that are related to language, as well as like constructed worlds was like I remember a seminar that she ended up trying out for and she got into. But she also takes like a beginning Russian class because she knows she likes Russian literature, so she feels like it might help me to be able to read the Russian in the original language, which is how she meets. That's how she meets Svetlana, who becomes like sort of her best friend throughout the novel, and Ivan. And I think these are like the two. We should say like the two central, or like the two biggest relationships that like pervade the whole novel, right?
Yep.
Maybe
they're
like
the main ones.
Yeah, like we should probably characterize them. Like
Svetlana is a lot.
Yeah. What do you think? What are your thoughts on Svetlana?
She is a lot. Like, it's so funny because when you read her dialogue, it's not even dialogue. It's just her talking. And I think that should say a lot about her already because she's Serbian, right?
Yeah.
And like and her dad was arrested? Question mark.
I think so.
I don't know. Like, but still, like, it was a very turbulent time, as we know, in the Eastern Bloc, and so they were greatly affected by that Tao, and she talks about it super nonchalantly, though.
Yeah.
But it's very evident then that like she is like part of the bourgeoisie.
Yeah.
Because like she always wanted to pay like for like their food and stuff, or like if they were hanging out.
Right.
And she would just casually say shit like, no, it's okay, I have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, all right, who says that? Like, in some ways you're like, okay, we get that like you're foreign and also, but like you can clearly speak enough English that you know what you sound like.
She's
so
almost
why
like
would
the
you say
Baron
that?
Zemo of the whole thing.
Yes, I was about to say she kind of Baron Zemo'd this, and it's her just being like, no, it's no big deal. Before the fall of everything, we were kind of really living it up.
But anyway, let's get in my
which is kind of what she
go to Paris.
Yeah, exactly. And but she describes that whole experience at one point of their house being raided.
Yeah.
And how afterwards the mom's reaction was just that she was pissed that their house was raided, and not even the fact that there was like a political upheaval or something like that. And I was like, okay, she's super burgess, and obviously that whole kaburgisan extends to when they're in Europe na rin.
Right.
So
it also gives her like at least in that first part like the sense of confidence that is almost like aggressively assertive. Like she's always like kind of telling Celine what to do. Celine is the main girl.
Yes.
But like I feel like we didn't mention.
Yeah,
her.
Did we not say that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And like I think we just like went in with the assumption like we're talking about Elif, but like the main character's name is Celine. And like she's sort of assertive towards Celine in a way na like whenever like Celine like expresses like an opinion, Svetlana is like very like she's very contra with it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah, she like parang one of those na she listens for the sake of reacting.
Yeah.
And not necessarily to actually learn something.
Yeah.
Like she she clearly engages for that reason and not necessarily to converse.
Have you ever seen the Whit Stillman film The Last Days of Disco? No. Okay.
You keep telling me to watch this.
Yeah.
But I
guess I do then. But like but
I always forget. I'm so sorry.
If you watch that, you'll see it reminded me a lot, this relationship between Svetlana and Celine. It reminds me a lot of the relationship between Kate Beckinsale and Chloe Sevigny in that movie. Mm-hmm. Where Chloe Sevigny is always like trying to like express something, and Kate Beckinsale's like, no, don't do that. That's stupid. And then she goes and does the opposite thing, but then like you know, in a way, it sort of makes them seem almost like hypocritical, but in a way that they are too, I guess, non-assertive to like call out on the other person.
Right.
So like that ends up like exposing a lot of like she ends up becoming like this interesting foil for Celine in a way na it kind of like provokes Celine to like be like, I should be more assertive. Like I have opinions, and like she was even describing like the difference between now and when I was in high school is that in high school I had so many opinions, but because high school was high school, it felt like a prison, so I couldn't express anything. And I had grown up thinking that college was going to be the place where I could express all my opinions and everything I felt. And now that I'm here, every opinion I'm like expressing is being shot down at the gate by the only person who wants to spend time with me.
Yeah, literally. Or alternative is similarly enough, even with her roommates.
Yeah, her roommates, kasi they don't really feel like they want to be like friends with her. They just like have to deal with the reality of her.
That of them living together.
Yeah, of them living together. And okay, we're just gonna rotate rooms. They're that type of roommate where they're just like, okay, let's just negotiate on the most peaceful way to coexist, cohabitate. But otherwise, like our friendship will be like probably just like on a superficial level, and we'll probably not get that deep into it. Which is the case. So that's
I thought it was cool though that like her roommates were I mean, almost everyone.
Yeah,
uses,
almost everyone is POC. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, like absolutely. Like even if you consider like like the Eastern European kids.
Yeah,
they're Eastern Europeans.
I mean,
so
yeah,
that's like another level of
like I
they're
mean,
not exactly white.
I don't have like 100% like confident grasp on it, but like my understanding, and this was something that she also kept alluding to between the Turkish and the Hungarians, is that there is a lot of there's like this deeper relationship that goes back historically between the two countries, to the point that like
medieval times.
Like I mean, like and like to the point like in the novel, she was like making allusions to how their languages are quite similar.
Connected.
Even if they look different superficially, but like there is a deeper connection,
like foundationally,
that runs between them both, which is part of what endears Selin to Ivan. But like like even though like there is that sense of like them being like somewhat whiter, like there is that deeper. I was actually like thinking like the fact that she keeps referencing like the relations between Hungary and Turkey in like the Middle Ages, like almost felt like that meme that's been going around of like how Ellen getting cancelled because of of 9/11.
Because of no, today she's cancelled all because Gerard Way saw 9/11 happen, and then that went all the way back to Napoleon. Breaking out of Waterloo.
Which like like now one of my top 3 memes of all time.
That's honestly same. So that's a great fucking meme.
But like extending also to here, it's almost like the Turkey and the Ottoman Empire and Hungary. This and that, and then like it leads up to like Selin
to Elif going to Harvard.
So like I love that. I mean, like it's one of those things where like like in fact you might even say, because wasn't the Ottoman Empire? I'm gonna fact check this first before I continue talking, because I don't want to be super wrong. But like,
go ahead.
Wasn't the Ottoman Empire? Let me just double check. I'm just like holding on here. I can.
Oh my god. This. I'm so nervous for what you're going to say.
Nope. I'm probably wrong.
Okay, no. Can you ask the question anyway? Then just edit it out. I want to hear what you want to say.
Because like I was gonna say, wasn't the Ottoman Empire like related to the empire that invades the one that invades Greece in 300?
Constantinople?
Wasn't it like Xerxes? Where's Xerxes from?
I don't think it's the Ottoman Empire.
He was okay. So Xerxes was the 4th king of kings of the
Ottoman Empire?
Of the Achaemenid Empire, also called the First Persian Empire.
So Persia.
Right, so Persia. So technically, if you wanna bring the meme that far back, you can say like Xerxes decides to conquer a good part of Asia Minor.
Exactly. So, to literally one of the largest continents in Asia Minor. I mean, countries in Asia Minor. And in 1995.
But if you extend that also to Greece, then you're able to include Greece decides to invade Troy after Helen is kidnapped.
Yeah.
So there we made the connection to Madeline Miller.
To all our books.
And basically. Okay, but that was a fun tangent. Again, so that's stressing how little I really know about Eastern European history and the things that have been going down there. But yeah, that's what drives the connection. And so let's segue into her and Ivan.
You got this.
So Ivan's Hungarian, and he's an older student. Like he's in his last years at Harvard, but he's still taking beginning Russian. So that's how they meet. And like the thing about Ivan is that you don't kind of like register him first as being like somebody who's going to be important in the story. He's kind of just a classmate.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah. In the beginning, I didn't see that coming also.
Right. But the thing that sort of brings them together...
I thought it was going to be the teacher, sorry.
Oh, really? Ooh.
I thought it was going to be that art teacher at first.
I mean,
realized,
this isn't going to be like a Mamma Mia.
Yeah, exactly.
2. Like, it wasn't going to start Mamma Mia 2 style with her singing I Kissed the Teacher. But like
No.
them kind of just being friends is a consequence of what they go through in that Russian class. So
Yeah.
this is also a good place to explore the story that they end up following throughout that semester, which is called Nina in Siberia, and it's roughly about this woman in Russia who gets abandoned by her lover, who was also, I think, named Ivan, wasn't he?
Yes.
And then he ends up going to like this research camp, and he doesn't explain why. He just leaves in a rush. And so Nina goes to Siberia to follow him and find out like what's the deal? Why didn't you like have a proper conversation with me before leaving? And like her life ends up going a different way, where she ends up also becoming a researcher at a different part of the research camp, and she ends up becoming like this at least statewide known physicist who like has her own career that is very separate from how it started. Which very much mirrors, I guess, the structure of this novel, where it's like helps to set out, like in a meta textual way, the way that we're supposed to interpret what's happening to Selin. Because like there's a point where I remember she had to do like a graded recitation where she had to recite, or like she had to pretend to be Nina.
They had to reenact the whole thing.
But like there was a point where she was saying, because like, you know, she would say things as Nina, but then she would also say something something self-deprecating to show that she was aware that Nina's situation was so miserable, and then the teachers would laugh. And it was kind of like also like that signaled to me like this is Elif pointing out that she knows that she's pointing out the misery of Selin's situation as an idiot in college, and we're laughing obviously, but that's also because like what like she deconstructs like the reasons that we laugh at that. It's us recognizing like, yeah, this is an absurd situation, nobody should have to go through this, and yet it just happens. It almost like diffuses the tension of the idiocy for us to be all able to say like, good, you see it too, like that crazy, right? Right?
This is insane shit.
And so like that's like kind of like her attitude towards that story going throughout the whole semester. And eventually, as she's like interacting more with Ivan in that class, she decides like, hey, maybe I should start writing emails to him too. And the first email she writes to him, she writes as if she were Nina in Siberia, writing to the Ivan in that story. Like she does a little role playing, and like he's like taken quite fancifully by that, so he responds in a way that she
as Ivan.
And it's a way that like sort of feeds into her thinking like, oh, this is going somewhere. So she like keeps like writing all these emails where he responds with very challenging answers that don't feel all that coherent, but she just like thinks like, oh, there's this underlying sense of mystery that is coming through with this guy, and I have to know more about him. So I'm gonna keep emailing him. I'm gonna keep being frustrated.
But we're never gonna talk in person.
Yeah, like that's the big point of this like relationship in the first part of the novel, is that most of the relationship is not them hanging out. It's them just emailing each other. And like that being the bulk of their relationship gives them grounds to like compare it to when they do actually hang out, especially in the latter half of the first part. Where it's like suddenly like, you know, they struggle to like find things to say to each other, but are happy to find that when they get it going, like they can really talk. Like there's about like a part later on in part one where they end up like staying up till 5 a.m. and they're just talking in his apartment, in his dorm room. So like, you know, like there's that room where like, or like there's so much like grounds for them to like start a fruitful relationship, and that's sort of what leads Selin to say like, yeah, I probably have a crush on this guy. And the thing is like, the fact that he's older means that his moving away from Harvard is imminent, and so she's aware of the fact like, oh, okay, at some point he's going to have to make the decision of whether he wants to stay on the East Coast or if he wants to go to the West Coast where he spends like the winter break. And like like he might stay in California. So she's like kind of like feeling tense about that. Even though like older readers for sure will know, like, there's no way he's gonna choose to stay on the East Coast if he has already that professional interest in the West Coast, diba?
Yeah. And also the fact that he made the effort to go there now.
Yeah, exactly. So
to check it out.
So like, and like he's got all this like plans like lined up for himself about how he wants to carry out his research career, and he's studying math, by the way. Like, whoa.
Yeah, he's a mathematician.
So like for him to like be this serious and like to have it all laid out, like there, like, oh, this is just gonna spell imminent doom for her.
Dude is. Yeah.
Right. But the other interesting point about their email relationship is that it also like blinds her to certain aspects of his personality or his like status that like are heartbreaking for her to discover. Mm-hmm. Like when she finds out that that Ivan has a girlfriend. First like he references it in an email, and she's like, "No, it can't be true." And like, I think like she quickly resolves that by finding out like, oh, he meant like a friend or an ex-girlfriend. But then it's when they're hanging out in person one time where they're like walking around the campus, and then Ivan's just like, "Oh, hey, this is my girlfriend, Eunice. Let me introduce you."
Yeah.
And it's like, what the hell, man? So
weird.
And like, it opens her up to this possibility, like, is my relationship with Ivan possibly illusory?
Yeah.
Because she has that one conversation where she meets with a psychologist who tells her like, hey, I think the way you're thinking of Ivan right now might be like a figment of your imagination, which like Selin like reacts very strongly to. It's like in her head she's like, how dare you like, like, what do you mean a figment of my imagination? Like, he's a real person. Like I've seen him, I've gotten replies from him, like all these things where she's like responding without outbursts. But then like the psychologist goes to explain everything in a way that feels like very rational.
Yeah. No, parang, well, if you think na, I mean, like the fact that they don't really talk much. Yeah, like we were saying that there's so much of him that was so hidden.
Yeah.
So she was able to like build this different person in her head.
Yeah, like parang
only
she
for like someone else to unravel.
Like it's to the point that like the emails almost constitute this barrier that for you think is the perfect friendship where there are no mistakes. Right. But the fact of the matter is that when you meet him in person, you will make mistakes, and a big part of friendship is being able to make mistakes that don't matter.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so and like she's kind of like unsure of like how to handle that, but like us reading it as we're older, we're like, hell yeah, that's true. Like, it's like the most sensible thing. Like, you have
literally
to realize,
leave him.
Like, Celine, you gotta know that's how it is, right? But yeah, and like she ends up like committing all these missteps on the way, where like in one of her emails she like declares her love for Ivan, and Ivan's not sure how to respond to that, and especially after Ivan introduces her to his girlfriend, she's like, just forget about it, like, like he like they kind of have this falling out, this misunderstanding.
Yeah, they like fight, right?
They basically fight, towards the
over email.
Boy, oh boy.
Oh man,
there
90s.
was never a good place to fight, as we, the Twitter natives, can tell you.
Yeah, the Twitter natives,
the Twitter generation,
the Twitter borns.
Yeah, the Twitter born. We made ourselves sound like
back then. You couldn't screen cap.
Yeah, at all. Instagram would
if she wanted to show someone,
Instagram used to be
she'd have to print it. It's
which also like that's a weird
true.
thing. Isn't that a weird thing? A weird detail that they point out about the internet back then was that you could find out where a person was based on their email address. Like she would do that, where she would like type his email in like a server, and it would say last logged on in California or something like that. You remember that?
Oh, okay. For some reason I didn't find that odd. Maybe I didn't find it odd because technically you could. I kind of remember that happening.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but
I think you could do that on Multiply. Sorry for saying that, but like, I think there.
I don't remember it.
Yeah, something like that, or on Sanga. Do you remember Sanga? Did you ever use Sanga?
I've never heard of that at all.
Oh, okay. Sanga was also like it was like pre-Tumblr.
Oh, okay.
And it was like a blog space also.
Yeah.
And I think you could, when you wrote a blog, there was like what do you call this? A note. What do you call this? You could like put a check on if you wanted to share your location or whatever.
I see. Okay, but
So,
see, that
I
one,
think-
you can at least like indicate your consent to have your
Right.
location
Maybe
shown.
that's the change of it now.
Right,
Like that
yeah,
evolution is you can consent to it.
Whereas,
but-
like, yeah, this one is very
Yeah,
explicitly
correct.
like Celine is doing this without Yvonne knowing, and it's what
Knowing,
gives
yeah.
her comfort. But Yvonne doesn't know that, which is like the
Yeah.
weird imbalance also of their relationship. But like
yeah.
that was the internet back then. It was literally
Yeah,
the Wild
man.
West, man. Anything could happen.
They could location tag.
Can I also
And-
say how weird it was that there was a time in our lives, like we're part of the generation where there was a time where we actually had lessons about this is how
About
you
computers?
turn on the computer.
Literally,
Now,
yeah.
click
I was
shut
thinking about that
down,
also.
click OK.
That was a seat work, and that was a seat
Yeah,
work.
diba? Like it's weird
Crazy.
thinking like, oh, kids have it so easy now. They just literally
I
put the computer
know.
to sleep or whatever, but they don't like necessarily shut down in the formal way we can,
Yeah.
or like they're not warned like if you shut it down the
Yeah.
wrong way, it's gonna lose data. You know, like that was such.
Oh,
an
you're gonna
alarmist-
lose your shit.
it was
I
such an
know.
alarmist way of reacting
I
to the
know.
computer. So yeah, the 90s.
I sorry, just to go back, like just real fast is like, what do you call this? I can't remember. Oh no, it was with Mags, right? Like we were talking about like how the difference between like us and like Gen Z and stuff, and how they also experience the internet. Like we were saying, that we used to have classes where we would have to turn on and turn off computers.
Yeah.
Because that was a thing that we all did
yeah,
before.
yeah.
And you had to and before, like Max mentioned this also, na parang when you had social media and stuff, it would log out automatically if you left.
Yeah.
Or you would just do it yourself. Whereas now, like, everything is just there all
Yeah.
the time.
I almost wonder if that's gonna happen in future generations, where you have the problem of somebody forgets to log off Facebook on a school computer, and so the next person to use the computer then has to log out for you, but they have the opportunity to be able to go on your profile and say,
Right.
"Hey, I'm a stupid person who forgot to log out of my account, so this is a reminder to myself that I should always log out of my account."
Yeah, exactly.
But
Where I don't know, the internet is scary now.
the internet's crazy. Like, if it was somehow scary back then, we were just ignorant. Now it's even
Yeah,
scarier.
like literally now it's literally worse. Children have too many rights on the
Too
internet
many
as
rights?
well.
Okay.
Okay.
So, wait, we should also like mention like going to the lead-in to part 2. The thing that provokes her her journey eastward is that there's some point where she decides like, maybe I should get more like professional experience. So again, I'm still interested in learning about language, so I'm going to teach English to like second language speakers, and like almost all of the experiences she has teaching ESL or like she's also assigned to
Are
like
not
teach math.
good.
They're horrible. They're like
Yeah.
like sometimes like for me it's like, wow, this is like dramatic. This is enough to turn off any person to the idea of teaching, because it's just like
Exactly.
the worst things that could possibly happen in
Right.
in a teaching scenario, in a tutoring scenario, where like the student just like ends up
Like,
spending the whole
doesn't care.
question like the session questioning like, what's the point if I have more important things to do, or like the student just like being very nonchalant about the fact that they didn't do the homework, or like the student not being even matched to the level of the teacher, and like the teacher not
Yeah.
being properly informed, so they are not able to engage properly.
Properly.
And
yeah.
so like eventually, as she's getting closer to Yvonne's like, hey, I actually have a friend who's like organizing this summer camp where you can go to like rural villages in Hungary, and you can teach English for the summer. And so she's like, yeah, okay, I'll go for that. And part of the reason that she also accepts it is that she knows that Yvonne is planning to go to Hungary for the summer. So she's like also like low-key like, well, if I go, not only will I be able to teach English, but I'll also still be close to Yvonne in his home, where that's like even more intimate, because it's literally, I'll be able to see where he grew up and everything. So she accepts that, but that's also all before they have that falling out over the emails. So she ends up just going to Hungary almost exclusively for the purpose of going to the summer camp teaching English. And that leads us into part 2.
Part dos.
Of the book, where it kicks off right away with her making first like side trips. Like the trip to Hungary is bookended by like 2 side trips. One is that she goes to Paris with Svetlana and 2 other friends of Svetlana. Which is, that's its own mess in itself. That one is more akin to like the Sally Rooney vacation.
Where that was truly it.
Yeah, where
the fact that it's Paris too.
Yeah, it's Paris, and like they stay in all these nice hotels, and they just go to like different art exhibits. It's literally a Sally Rooney vacation, and like Svetlana ends up staying with her friends throughout the Western European countries, where they're just hitting up all the tourist spots. Like they end up in Venice, I think, is the last one that they visit. But like Selin's with them, and like even at the airport, it's already fraught with the tension of her falling out with Ivan, because she sees Ivan at the airport and she finds out we're going on the same foot. This is annoying.
Yeah.
Right?
Because she didn't know that he was also gonna go to Paris.
Yeah, like she thought he was gonna leave on an earlier flight. But then
to go straight to Budapest.
but this is also like a weird misunderstanding on her part, on both of their parts, because the way he explained why he ended up being on the same flight to her is like, you forget, I had to graduate. And it's like, that was a given, dude. Like,
and was your graduation gift Paris?
Yeah, like how did that affect your travel plans? Like you should have seen this 4 years in advance. Like like it was sort of weird how he explained that was the reason that he ended up leaving the same time that she did. But like it helps to diffuse some of their tension, and like they promise now when she arrives in Budapest, she's gonna be able to like see him, and hopefully they'll be okay now. But until then, it's Paris, and like
it's Paris time.
The nature of their time in Paris is very like, I mean, like Celine is kind of just like the fourth wheel, because that's
fourth wheel.
That's what's going on. It's like
she was very outsider looking,
right? Like Svetlana was there with like, didn't she have an aunt who lived there also? Who's kind of
that's where they were staying with,
right? And like the aunt was kind of like ruining her vibe. Was ruining Svetlana's
because
vibe.
She was super tita. She was super tita
like
in the worst
her
way.
Get like haircuts that probably made her look worse in front of the guy that she was sort of trying to get with, sort of Bill. And like it just makes it gives Selin on one hand like this space to be like, okay, I don't have to be involved in this on one hand, but on the other hand, maybe some people have it worse off than me and Ivan, because this is messy. Boy, it's messy. And like the fact that I won't be going with them all the way through this summer is probably like part of the relief that comes to her. It's like I won't have to deal with this. But like at the same time, and this is something I really appreciated as I was reading along, you see that from the moment they're in Europe, Celin's like already turning around on like the flaws that she had in the first part. Like her relationship with Svetlana changes in a way that they're able to converse more, rather than Svetlana just telling Selin off, right? Where they're able to argue in ways that they can actually agree on their disagreements, and Selin doesn't feel like she's being put down by Svetlana whenever Svetlana questions something or like criticizes her for something, which is like that sign of like, oh, the maturity is being accrued, which is also like the huge masterstroke of this book, about it being more about that process of maturation that's happening over this 1 year than it is about the classes that she's taking or her course or this relationship with Ivan. But it's the subtlety of her like growing up and what pain comes around with that. Is there anything else that we should say about Paris, or should we just go straight to Budapest?
Not much, because honestly, it's very straightforward, that part.
It's really,
in my opinion,
it's really that much to just diffuse that tension that she feels at the end of part 1, so that when she arrives in Budapest, things are okay. And in fact, like Ivan is the one who picks her up at the airport.
That's right.
Right. So when she gets to Budapest, she is picked up by Ivan, but luckily she's there with another teacher who's there part of the program. So it isn't just her and Ivan in the car. but like they go to the place where all the teachers are supposed to meet up, and then the idea is that dapat Celine and Ivan were supposed to bring the bags of everyone to the hostel where they were gonna stay, but because they had somehow arrived earlier than them, Ivan like suggests, "Hey, I'm going to meet some friends after this. You wanna come?" And Celine's like, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, why not? Like things between us seem to be going okay, so let's go for that." So they're on the way, and like Celine's feeling like, okay, we now have a semblance of our previous relationship because we're talking and the conversation's going good. But that's like tenuous, and like their conversation doesn't like remain consistent. Like at some point they end up like disagreeing, or like he says something that's like low-key insulting to her, and she feels like a little weird about it. Not to mention that when she does meet his friends, they're all hanging out by the Danube River, where she does feel that outsider status where, oh yeah, all of these kids...
But it's...
Sorry, yeah?
No, I was gonna say, but it's like worse.
Yeah, it's worse, because like they all are like math kids, and they all speak Hungarian.
Yeah.
And like she's like kind of just like like unsure about like her Hungarian ability, so she's like, okay, I'm gonna take a walk by the river now. You guys can go play volleyball if you want. And so she's like not sure of like being there. And like the whole time, like she's trying as much as possible not to like open this up to Ivan, but Ivan can clearly sense it, but he doesn't know also how to respond to it either. So she ends up also confiding. Celine like ends up confiding in her mom, who among the mother-daughter relationships that we've examined in the past novels that we've read, this is one of the healthiest, where like Celine's like very open towards her mom. Like she tells her mom everything, and the mom's very non-judgmental about it, and she's actually very like encouraging with her advice. Like, oh honey, men like
they are
men.
Sometimes they are men,
right? Like she's like, have a good time without him, it's fine. And like, it's easy to take that advice because after that that day, the afternoon that they spend by the Danube River with Ivan's friends, which eventually ends up becoming Celine staying over in Ivan's house overnight and meeting his family, she ends up going to the village where she's supposed to teach English. And like, I wanna hear what you think about this, because I feel like this part of the book, the part where she's spending in the village, is like the most removed from everything that's ever happened up until this point. But it's also like the best part of the book.
But yeah, I was about to say, but it's also the most, because it's the most where she's by herself.
Yeah, it's the most.
And then parang she can be a bit more introspective, I guess, about what she wants.
And it's the one where it's most tender towards herself without beating her over the head about the stupidity of some of the things that she does. Like, like there is that advantage that the book puts her on, is that because these are like rural, which is like a weird way of looking at it, but it's like because these people are like rural people who are seeking her help, she kind of has a privilege over them. But then it's also her being the outsider again, and her learning to assimilate into the community status that allows them to sort of become leveled out. Correct. Right? And
because they both need to learn things from each other.
Yeah, exactly.
In such a way, it's not, whereas like if she was doing ESL in the States, it was very like not give and take.
Yeah.
It was very just like her giving a lot and then the students taking nothing, whereas here it was more like, oh, I understand that, the students were really like, we asked for this.
And like that's part of also the way that she learns that what the psychologist had told her about friendships was correct. Like I realized like I've been in a similar experience to this before, where apart from like teaching like semester-long classes, there was a time where I was also teaching ESL classes. And the ESL classes were always like harder to get like a grasp on because I was meeting them less frequently, but also because like apart from the language barrier, it was like really.
Was that in school? You were teaching that in school?
I was, yeah.
Oh, I don't know why.
So I was, it was very low key about it. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. But like, yeah, it was it, those, it was harder to like build that connection, except with like the students who already had that advantage of kind of knowing English more. So there was more of that effort of trying to like connect between me and them. Whereas like at least with the students that I was teaching junior college, it was like, okay, we all have a common ground here. I can like make certain cultural references that will hopefully catch your attention, and I will do my best to match those cultural references to the subjects that I'm teaching.
Correct.
So like that one was like easier to build a relationship, and I think it helps also that for Celine, while she's spending time in the village, she also has a dynamic experience in terms of who she's with at the time. Like she lives with 3 separate families. And like the first one is like an older woman, like she's the mother of the household. And so she has that disposition towards Celine where she's like, oh yes, I am an older figure towards you, so you'll get the hang of this place, basically. And then the second person that she ends up spending time with is how did she pronounce it in the audiobook?
Rose. I didn't. This part I didn't read in audiobook. No.
Oh, okay. So you don't know if it's...
I finished the second half in the...
You don't know if it's Rosha or Rosa.
Or Rosa. In my head I was just going Rosa.
Yeah, it's spelled, either way it's spelled R-O-Z and an S with a little curly Q under A. And like who is a little closer to her age group, but she's more like testy with Celine. And like bulk of that July portion of part 2 is Celine spending time with Rosha. And her first being like kind of annoyed, like, oh, she's so also assertive in a way that's quite like Svetlana, where she's like she's trying to force this relationship between us, which goes against every attempt that I've made so far to try and make friendships with people.
Yeah.
But it's also what I think colors the nature, the texture of their relationships. Like, well, she really wants to be friends with me.
Correct.
Right?
I agree.
And then, like, it's also during this time where she's able to, like, make amends with Ivan. Because, like, at some point, they go back to Budapest to go to, like, a camp. And that's, like, a larger camp.
Yeah, they have to go back to his house also, right?
Yeah.
Or did I make that up?
It's weird, because, like, I remember, like, when I got to that part about the camp, I was, like, I totally forgot, like, wait, was the structure that she was supposed to go to a camp by herself? Or, because, like, why didn't she just stay in the village? So it was, like, very confusing to me. But then, like, she, like, up until the point that she reaches the camp, she's, like, negotiating about whether or not she should call Ivan, if she should like ask him to see her there in the village, or if she should ask him to pick her up. But that they don't see each other again until she moves back to that camp that's closer to Budapest. And while they're together, that's like the period now where they're like finally making amends. Like there's one scene where they basically do 20 questions. It's the most honest round of 20 questions ever, where he's like asking her everything. It's like, hey, why did you email me about being Nina in Siberia? And she was like, I don't know, I was curious to learn more about you and I wanted to do it right. And he's like, well, why did you tell me that you loved me in that one email? She's like, I wanted to get your attention. It's like, well, it worked. And then like, you know, at the same time, she was also like trying to like clarify, like, why are you this way with me? Like, it made it seem like you had planned the way that you revealed that you had a girlfriend rather than telling me up front, which made me feel very embarrassed. And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Like, he just ends up also apologizing. And she's like, okay, I guess I accept that apology. And, like, that leads to them, the day after, like, she stays over again in his house. They have that canoe ride.
Right.
Which is like it's a central scene, I think, in this book. Where they meet up, they take a canoe ride going down the Danube River, and he keeps saying like, "Oh, we should stop. I know where the stop is. I know exactly where we should stop." And then when they get to that stop, he's like, "Maybe we should stop like a few more like miles down the river."
Yeah.
And then like when they get a few miles down the river, he's like, oh, this was not the stop that I was thinking we should do. So like,
yeah, he was also lost.
Yeah, he's very lost, and like he ends up like they end up parking the canoe on like a shoreline, and he's like, wait here, I'm gonna look for a telephone, and I'm gonna try to call for my mom to pick us up.
Oh yeah, that's also where you remember that it's the 90s.
Yeah,
because you're just like, oh, they can't just like
they don't have cell tracking or
yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
There's
they
like
can Google Maps
it's
it.
recurring that she has to like buy tokens to be able to use a payphone in several places.
Yeah. Damn. Oh, yeah, that whole thing about the payphone thing also.
Which,
insane.
By the way, that's one of the funniest things. Like, I haven't mentioned this yet, but it's evident, I guess, in the way we've been talking about this book. I think this is one of the funniest books I've ever read.
Yeah, no, yes, I agree. I super love this book. It's so funny. And in the audiobook also, Elif is really funny.
Really?
Like
I want to listen to the audiobook
her
now.
voice is so relaxed kasi, and when she says the funny parts, it's nakakagulat.
I bet
in a nice way.
She must be so good at making kwento. Like, she must be such a good person
I feel
to
like,
with.
Yeah, true. True.
I'm gonna listen to the
Elif,
audiobook.
if you're still listening.
Yeah, we would love to get you on the show talking about I don't know, whatever you want.
Let's have drinks. I don't know. Yeah, true.
Anyway, so like but like there was like before we were recording, like I was reviewing the passages I highlighted, and some of them are like so funny to read out of context. My favorite one, which made me laugh out loud again, was that it was one letter that she had written to Yvonne, where she was saying something like, I'm looking for it, but she was saying something like, well, I found it. Hold on, I'm getting to it. Give me a second. No. Okay, she says, this is the passage I highlighted, and she was telling Yvonne in an email, my blood is going to be inside someone else's brain. The blood that fuels my thoughts will fuel someone else's. What a strange penetration. And I was like, what is she talking about?
This book, and that's the great thing, I think, is that she's not afraid to make a girl so weird.
Yeah, which
like she's clearly going through it.
She knows that there's endearingness in the strange stuff.
Yes, truly, it's not weird in the sense that it's super off-putting. It's more just like, girl.
Yeah,
wait, let's just
hello.
You know. Yeah, exactly. It's just like, whoa, dude.
Or,
the 90s.
Yeah, or like related to you're saying about payphones. One of the other things that really made me laugh out loud was like later when she goes to Turkey and like she's at the airport and she needs to make a call on the payphone. This guy who she doesn't even know if he works in the airport, he comes up to her and he's explained to her.
Asks for money.
No, right? Like he explains to her
like,
first. He's like, you need a token to use the payphone, and then he explains the concept of token. Like he mansplains it to her. Like, you don't understand. Like, it's not real currency. You only need it to call on this payphone. I can exchange the money for a token. And then she's like, oh, I only have Hungarian money. And he's like, it's okay. I'm going to bring it to a money exchange. So you just give me the Hungarian money, and I'll be able to exchange it for a token. And then she's like, okay, I don't know how much is appropriate, so I'll just give you this much amount. And he's like, thank you, I'll be right back, I promise. And then when he comes back, he's like, so it turns out they don't accept Hungarian money.
Wow.
So funny.
It's a wild ride.
Yeah.
It is a wild ride.
And
some of it.
And speaking of wild rides, going back to the canoe, like they parked the canoe, and then he ends up saying like that, like, I'm gonna look for a payphone, can you wait here with the canoe? And she waits like such a long time that the police show up.
Oh jeez, yeah, that's right. I totally forgot about that.
And the police are like, excuse me, are you homeless? Is their first question.
And then she's just like, okay.
Yeah, she has to like convince them, like, no, my friend is looking for a payphone. And they're like, oh, good, very good. And they just kind of leave her alone without giving her any help.
Yeah,
of course,
which is
typical.
The police, right?
Police.
Yeah, part of me was like, oh, the police, unhelpful again.
Of course, as per usual, bastards.
Yeah.
But like eventually, like she waits for so long that she gets frustrated with Ivan, and she's about to leave. She even like prepares to write him a Nina in Siberia-esque note saying that she's gone to look for him. But then he shows up and he's like, "You won't believe what happened. I was chased by a wild dog." Like, what's going on?
And then she's just like, and I was here being questioned by the police.
Yeah. Can I also mention, I just remembered one of my favorite, funniest out of context bits that came from the Nina and Siberia story itself was that when, in the very start of the story, when the Ivan of that story leaves, and Nina goes to Ivan's father to ask him, like, I need information, like, can I talk to the uncle who he's supposedly staying with? And like the father is like, no, like I haven't spoken to him in years. He's like, please, I need to find out what happened to Ivan. And then
he's like, okay, here's his number.
Yeah, and but like as he's giving her the number, he says something like, first my wife, then my son.
Yeah, then my son. And then that made me think that, yeah, part of me is like, that made me think, wait, did the wife run away with the brother? But
it's also like, it's so funny. Yeah, and it's so funny that they would include that in a story that ends up being used as an instructional guide
as
for beginning.
For yeah, exactly. And also there's another part in the second. I really like the Nina story, by the way. Like so if we were to just extract that part in itself, so good.
Yeah.
But I like the part where she called. I don't know why I found this funny, but like it was kind of funny to me. Am I heartless? Where she was calling the farm, and then the person who answered the was like, "Hi, welcome to." Like she says something like it's like if you were calling Ayala Malls, and then the person who answered was sorry. I'm just thinking of that now because I saw the mall on my window.
Yeah.
But the person who answered was like, "Hi, this is SM," and then you're just like, "Is this not the number for Ayala?" And it's like, "No, how may I help you?" And then she's like, "Have you?" And then she just goes, "Is there a person there named Ivan? What's his name?" And then the lady just goes, "No, never heard of it," and then hangs up. And then you're kind of just like, "Wait, what? Yeah. What just happened?"
Like it's so funny because in that story, like it seems like something sketchy is going on, like. He's exactly. Like embroiled in this conspiracy of the government to like work on something secret. But then like by the end, Ivan actually goes back to Nina and he's like, I'm gonna explain to you everything that went down. It was actually less crazy than you think and much simpler.
Yeah, I actually just liked someone else.
Yeah, it was really. You have to know, I was having an affair while we were together.
Yeah,
and like it's been long
not
enough.
The government. It's me.
It's really me, and I wish I had the balls to tell you, but silly me.
Because I have regrets.
I have no balls. And no balls.
Exactly. I have no balls. That's it. And the great part of that is her just going like, you know what? It's fine that you don't have balls because now I love someone else and also I'm more successful than you.
Yeah. So,
the end.
Which, again, mirrors in a way like what's going on here with the canoe scene, which in itself is a bigger reflection of the relationship between Ivan and Celine throughout the entire novel. Because when he comes back and he has the explanation like, I was being chased by wild dogs, it was actually much simpler than you had made up in your head.
Than you had... Yeah, exactly. And she's just like, oh
yeah, I guess so. Okay, well, there's nothing to be mad about. Let's go call your mom then.
The police went that way.
Yeah, the police went that way. So they basically have that. And then after she stays over in his house one more time, kind of getting to know the family, who they will also be going on a canoe trip in Western Hungary at some point. She goes with him because he's supposed to make her hatid. Sorry, is it hatid or sundo? He's gonna drop her off.
Yeah, hatid.
Yeah, he's making her hatid.
Yeah.
He's
making her. I was like, what?
He's dropping her off at the campground again, and on the way they.
Sorry, just so we're clear, sundo is pick up.
Okay, got it. Making sure, because I remember hearing that word a lot as a kid growing up. Because I was being sundo all the time. Anyway, enough of that tangent. So, on the way back to the camp, Celine realizes, because they stopped by the Thai embassy, and she realizes like, oh, right, because after this, Ivan's gonna end up going to Thailand, and then after he's in, and then like he's also gonna be in
Japan. Isn't it Japan?
No, but don't they also go to the Thai embassy? They
You're right.
He's gonna do like an Asian trip.
Like he literally does. Yeah.
And then after that, he's already told her that he's gonna go to California, not forever. So she realizes then at that moment, like, oh, this is the last time I'm gonna see him in a long time. Like,
Yeah.
there's a very huge possibility.
There was never room for me.
Yeah, like this is it. This is the end of the line for us. But
Yeah.
Wow. I realized I should not have said that in light of the fact that I'm also gonna say another thing.
At the end of it.
Which I'll get to in a bit.
I have things to say about that, by the way, but okay, go ahead.
Okay, but she's realizing, like, oh my god, yeah, this is gonna be the last time, and she doesn't, like, really address it until, like, they actually have to part ways at a beachfront where the camp has supposedly gone for the day, and he's, like, kind of reassuring us, like, hey, we'll always have email, but by this point, you can tell that she's obviously lost faith in it, and, like, for her, this is it. This is gonna be
right.
the last time.
And at that point, you can't like, judge her because, like, no one really knew what was gonna happen to email. Right. Like, exactly. Everyone kind of just thought that not everyone was gonna get this anyway.
Yeah,
so.
and by the way, like, can we just, like, point out, like, that, like, even feels more poignant now, knowing that how easily social media connects us to people that we have not been in touch with. Like, I can just tell a person, like, hey.
Exactly. No, like, okay, and I think this is a good segue, but, like, you were on a podcast recently with our friend Martin, and you didn't know that pre-COVID, Martin had moved to Brazil. Right. And so he was doing the podcast from Brazil while you and Leon were here in the Philippines. Yeah. And
I wasn't even sure if the other host, Zhao, was here also in Cebu, or if he was I think he's in Manila, but then, like, he's from here also, so I wasn't sure where he was.
He's from Cebu, you mean?
Yeah, he's from Cebu, but I wasn't sure if he was here or in Manila. But anyway, like, very much that. But, like, that's why, now that she's, like, disillusioned about email, she's like, no, we're never gonna see each other again. This is it. This is, like, quite possibly the last time I ever see you, and our roads will diverge, like, wildly. And, like, she doesn't make a big deal out of it. She just, like, looks at him, and she's like, all right, later.
Bye.
And he's like,
wow. Wow.
And he's like, later.
That was a good, okay.
Later.
All right. Stop saying later. Okay, we get it. In case, if anyone gets the reference, let's not say what it is. Yeah. Let's just, like, leave it at that.
I mean, like, he doesn't call her by her name or anything. He just says later. Yeah. And that's kind of it. And she kind of just, like, walks around a bit until he disappears, and then she cries. Oh boy! And I was like, oh man, is this my that?
Say. Yeah, exactly. That's what he told me. Towards the end of reading the book, he was like, "Is this where I'm at?
Is this my call me by your name?"
Yeah. And I want to point out, though, I wanted to say that this is so much better than Call Me By Your Name.
Okay.
And because I'm at this point also where I have given up on Call Me By Your Name.
Right.
And as we should all move away from that, because it was really such a time that, we thought it was great, and then after a while we're like, oh, actually this is disgusting.
Yeah,
we're not there anymore.
There were two things in vogue in the mid 2010s. Hamilton and Call Me By Your Name.
And Call Me By Your Name. That's true. It happened in literally the same year. And now we just cannot stand either of those things for multiple reasons. It's very hard. Difficult. So difficult. But then, like, I do get that when you were saying that this was your Call Me By Your Name, I was not at the same point with you yet.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get it. That's why I thought in the beginning it was the teacher. Because I was like, is this what he means? But then now I understand. And, that whole sentiment...
Right.
Yeah. That whole sentiment is still... I mean, I don't know. If we were to say one good thing about Call Me By Your Name, you can't deny, Din, that the kind of raw emotion that was evoked in that novel...
For sure.
It's still so heavy and it's so strong.
The circumstances of that are different because also the fact that he's experiencing this as an adolescent, like he's growing into adulthood and he's learning, like, oh, I should actually be disillusioned with the first love whole thing.
Yeah,
but, like,
exactly.
This one is, like, a different context also because, like, and this is something that's funny about the book. I mean, not really, but maybe it is. I don't know. You decide.
Okay.
Is that somebody came up to Elif Batuman and it's like, hey, they never have sex in this book. There's literally nobody ever has sex in this book. What happened?
What's the problem?
What's going on?
What's the deal?
You gotta tell me.
Like, Exactly. And I actually think, you know what, I didn't really realize that also until the end. And even though they had that whole, she and Svetlana have that discussion in the beginning about losing their virginities.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that you don't know if Svetlana ever does, and you know for sure that, I mean, not ever does, like in the book, at least
in the context,
but like,
yeah, they're highly introspective.
I mean, or not, she can do what she wants. It's 2021.
First-person narrative.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you know that she what's her name? Selin and Yvonne don't even kiss at all, but they have a breakup anyway. That's still, like, I find that to be just as impactful as if, you know, how kind of Call Me by Your Name made me feel before when I didn't know anything about Call Me by Your Name. And I feel like, because especially I think in Call Me by Your Name, the sex was just very, you know, to add to all the confusion and the rawness of it all. And I think if she had added it here, I think the context is also different because a lot of times, you know, when you have like sex scenes with like girls and stuff, that's also difficult, I think, especially, I mean, like, I would trust Elif to do it, but also I don't think she's the kind of person who would, you know, put that in a scene in some kind of to put that unnecessarily. And I think either way it would have not mattered, because in the end the outcome would have been the same. But I think it still makes it better that it just didn't happen, because that's not because you wouldn't want to make that part of the pain, like in Lady Bird, you know, like in Lady Bird, when that, like, obviously I like how it was done in Lady Bird though, and that was very important in Lady Bird's, you know, like,
and its context
to be more
coming of age thing.
Exactly. Whereas this coming of age was so different in a lot of ways that it didn't, that I feel like if they had sex, it would not have served the purpose.
I think
and it would have just made Ivan look worse, and he looks so bad already as it is.
No, exactly.
So
like it was almost like
I was
unnecessarily.
Exactly, and it's like, I get it, he's bad. And I was gonna say, the other big thing that Call Me by Your Name and this have in common, I guess, is that in the end, men ain't shit. So
also they're both graduate students. Like,
also, they're both graduate students
who are there just for the summer.
Who are there for the summer, who have who know that they're gonna go somewhere else and have a whole life planned out for them, and somewhere else entirely.
And the Mediterranean is involved in some way.
In some way or form. So
so yeah.
Oh man. So if you go back to the Iliad, it'll eventually lead you to the Mediterranean Sea in Italy.
You know how that book famously also.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
Yeah, but like also going back to the idea of like there not being any sex in this book, like it also like harkened to something that she was saying in the LitHub article, if I remember correctly, where she was saying like, you know, whenever there's like a sex scene, there's always like this consummation that's happening between the two characters, and you feel like at the time you feel like all the frustrations have been resolved in this one moment where they're in agreement with each other, or not in agreement, or however that complicates or resolves the tension. And I think it's very much to the advantage of this book that she chooses not to resolve any of those tensions in this way, and saying like the frustrations
physically,
the frustrations that she feels with this guy, she's not gonna resolve by interacting with the guy. She's gonna resolve them by living on her own, living in a village that she's never gonna visit in a rural ever again. Yeah, she's gonna remember for the rest of her life, but she's never gonna talk to,
never gonna see them again,
shape or form, as far as we know. And as far as that reader of Elif is concerned, Elif said also later on, like, I'm writing a third book now, and don't worry, there's going to be plenty of sex in it.
Wow!
Like, in a way that we
good
explore
for her.
The problematics of it. But yeah, like,
wow.
Like, so you have that parting between, and like that whole idea of not wanting to go the usual route is also what informs the ending, because you would think that if Ivan and Selin form like the heart of, or the thrust of this novel, the narrative thrust of this novel, it's interesting that she doesn't end the book there. Like, there's still a whole other portion of part 2.
Oh, yeah.
Where Selin has to go
of
to
her
Turkey,
in Turkey.
right? Yeah, and like, that again provides room for the narrative to allow Selin to kind of diffuse the tension. Like, okay, I guess this is. I'm gonna still think about it. I'm still thinking about the fact that I'm now in a country that's halfway between California and Tokyo. Like those are two places. I'm now the midpoint, and I wonder if he's thinking about that. But then he never calls her. Like he never like gets in touch with her. So it like kind of like gives her the message like he's done with me, right?
Yeah.
And like even while like she's in Turkey, she's like reckoning also with her family. So up until that point, like she had such a healthy relationship with her mom, but then when she's with her family, it's like all the worst.
She's also outsider again.
Yeah, it's all the worst things that you could expect to happen on a family vacation, where all of them are gossiping about this one person who's there in the party, who's an outsider, and like she can't seem to fit in with her age group because all of them are obsessed now with the idea of life happening to me, and like for Celine, it's like she doesn't want that because ostensibly life happened to her.
Yeah, already, and she's like, guys,
I can't. You don't know what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Guys, when you know, you know.
When you truly.
And like it ends in the most unusual place, which is that they go first to like preempting the very end. She goes with her family to like this golf hotel, which is like in the swamplands in like Turkey, and it's like owned by this distant half relative of her grandmother, and like they go into the swamp area and they see that it's teeming with life, and she kind of sees like her half cousin beat a snake to death, and it reminds her a lot of like Saint George, who like was referenced earlier in the book because I think either Yvonne or somebody from the village was telling her the story of Saint George and how there was like a popularized version of the story, and how there's a real version of the story about how St. George actually killed the dragon that was plaguing this one town. And like that sort of like resolves something in her. Like there's like an instant turn. Like she goes from being sick to being like, oh no, okay.
Cured.
Now the fact that I'm able to make these associations on a mental level means that I can sort of live on my own. Or like I can operate on my own independently of this experience that I've had, this harrowing interior experience I've had with Yvonne and with this first year of college. So the way the book ends is that when she gets back to Harvard in the fall, she just decides, like, I'm not going to be a linguistics major. Like, no way in hell. I'm never taking a philosophy of language class again because everything I learned in those classes I absolutely disagreed with. And the fact that I disagreed with them doesn't make me any stupid, or it doesn't mean that I'm stupid, but it just means that I have a different experience that maybe is not included in the popular theories that that white people theorists will normally have. Because like she was saying, like she actually was like leaning more towards like this one theory because it corresponded to her experience of speaking Turkish and being able to speak Turkish all her life. But the other theory which she disagreed with, which everyone else agreed with, seemed to work well in terms of English only. And so that was the commonly accepted theory. And that was her realizing like, oh, I can actually disagree with the majority because, I have a different experience. And so, I have to be at peace with that. And that's how the book ends. Wow.
Good shit.
Good book. Man, I missed this. I
so good.
Truly cannot wait for our next novel.
Well, me too! Because...
Which is a multi-sensory... That's going to be a multimedia experience, that one. But,
it is.
This was so good. It goes without saying, highly endorse this book. It is such a good book.
Same.
Shall we get... you want to do any last impressions before we do course listing? Or what are your thoughts coming out of the discussion?
No, I just genuinely really liked this one. Yeah. I really had fun with it.
Yeah, it was good reading.
I feel like I didn't say a lot, but I swear to God, I really like this book. It was really good and it was really funny, and I'm interested to see more of Ellie. I want to read her essays now. Yeah, because I genuinely I can't imagine what she'd be like as an essayist. I mean, like I can, but then I'd like to.
Yeah, it's got that same tone of voice, but like, like the fact that she's like referring. I mean, like those are different modes, but you'll see. It's enjoyable to read. Basically, she has the same humor. It's consistent.
Okay,
she's got a style.
We love.
Yeah, we love it. So please, Elif, if you're still listening,
if you manage to go this far,
more, know that you have fans in the Philippines.
Yeah, exactly.
This book is good. Okay, course listing. You want to start or should I?
You can go first.
Okay, so one thing I found really interesting about this book is that, and this is something that Elif has been very vocal about in terms of her promotions for this book, is that, and like also as is evident with her first book, The Possessed, she is a huge fan of Russian literature, classic Russian, modern Russian literature, so Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, all these things. So she's really into that. And it's to the point that when she was doing the promotions for this book, she was making this distinction that a lot of what she's writing about follows more in the vein of Russian literature, Russian literary tradition than it does for American. And one of the ways that I found was very interesting about how she described that was that she said, like, Russian literature, at least this is how this is described in the LitHub article, is that Russian literature, because it's had to deal with, like the Tsars, and then going through the upheavals of the 20th century, until now reaching today with Putin as president. Like,
we're just doing timelines again.
Yeah, basically, yeah, literally, and like the fact that the modern Russian authors were existing on the onset of that, like right before the Bolsheviks came to power. Like it was a thing where they could not anticipate that the fabric of their entire society was going to change in a radical way, and like as a result, to write after that tradition is to be aware of the fact that you can write in a way that's totally unsentimental and unnostalgic, which is contrasted to American literature, which she was pointing out that American literature can be very nostalgic because with the way capitalism is, it will make you believe that there was a golden age, there was a golden period, even though capitalism historically fucked everyone over. So throughout the whole 20th century. So really that idea of a golden age is really an illusion. That makes that sense of nostalgia very, illusory. And so it's interesting to look at how that influence affects her writing in that sense, where this is a book that I definitely am sure is not nostalgic, as we've been saying about the difference between the older sounding narrator and the young protagonist. But there is a way that she's straddling that line where she's not being nostalgic. She's definitely being critical, but not judgmental, which I think is an interesting way of telling stories about the past.
Correct.
So that's why my course listing is something about the rough term I have for it is postmodern Russian literature. But then it's also something that is closer to writing after your influences, or doing a case study of people who write after an identified influence. It's interesting to trace that out.
I'd go to that seminar. I'd want to go to that class.
How about you?
And read about that here.
What you got?
Mine was more on I tried asking you about this earlier because I didn't know how to describe it.
Okay.
But yeah. I thought that it would be more on that whole concept of because a running theme of this was how she would navigate her relationships through what she was already learning in school,
right? And
then also how she based on her own experiences with language and and things like that.
Yeah,
I thought that this would be a good book to excerpt for a history of ideas class, which is if you've never taken history of ideas, it's basically a philosophy class that we had to take in university, and or work it into a hybrid with another class that we used to take in university, which is called Work and Society. And in that one you basically do think about you do go try to delve into more of work and society, but your place, in the workforce, but then also how that relates to you with everyone else in your life, not just work, not just work related. And so some kind of hybrid class, I think, of those two things.
Yeah,
It's be where I would place this.
Yeah, it's interesting because like with the history of ideas, like that's like leaning more towards like the bigger theories that have dominated discourse, and like like the danger of that is that so many of those theories that could be considered quote unquote major are most likely like Western theories or theories that privilege white people over minorities,
Right.
and especially because so many of them were written by white cis straight men. So like
Yes.
like it's to the point that like I saw this tweet this morning that was basically saying like theory isn't just a matter of like being able to quote dead white people, but it is also being able to look at the experiences of others and people who have been able to abstract from their experience a framework that they're able to apply on other lives.
Right.
And so like that's why that this one also feels very consistent to history of ideas then, because then you have this whole refutation of like commonly accepted theories based on minority experiences, like her saying that no, your theory of language does not correspond to my ability to speak and read in both Turkish and English, and also to make associations between Turkish and Hungarian.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And so like it's never really a closed system that history is just set. The history of ideas is just set in the people who have dominated the discourse, but also like showing that there's another way of thinking about the world that hasn't like been disseminated.
We haven't like
yet.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Good shit.
Do you still want to do sports corner? I feel like we've had like such a good discussion.
I don't have a question.
That's fine. I feel like we've gotten so much done. This is one of the most exciting like discussions we've had. I think. I
had fun.
This feels like a breath of fresh air, to be honest. Not to say that our past episodes weren't as good as this, but like it feels good to be like kind of back in this mode again. I think thinking from how we were coming out coming out of our first season, I think we were definitely kind of exhausted of having to do so many novels one after the other. But then I also like am recognizing now like, oh yeah, the intensity of discussion that we had after those things was pretty good. It was nice.
Agreed.
I miss this.
I had fun.
So
I did miss this. Yeah. That was a lot more than I thought.
Yeah.
It's always like that with the novels. Like you always think like that's so happened to us so many times where I've been like, oh no, I'm scared. I don't know. I won't have anything to say.
Yeah.
And then in the end, it's like, oh, there's so much to say.
Yeah, exactly. And then like there's so much to relate to our experience that like.
Right.
Yeah, again, like makes you feel like reading is as enjoyable as it was when we were in college.
Right, exactly.
Right. So with that, I guess we should just like announce the next episode then, and then we can close off.
Hell yeah.
So we're recording this post the change in schedule, so which means that our next episode, which is coming out next week, will be the album "Bark Your Head Off, Dog" by Hopalong, which is an album that we love. And it is also an album that is beloved by one of the guests who we're bringing along. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be fun. That's going to be exciting. I am looking forward to recording with them, with our guests, tomorrow.
Yeah, we're going to do this.
Yeah, we're recording this. Guys. Don't worry, guys. We got this. We totally have this.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, guys.
Apart from that, if you really enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed talking about The Idiot, please feel free to give us a review. Give us a 5-star rating. We only read 5-star reviews. Tell us what other books you'd like us to read, if ever, in the far future. When it comes.
In the far future.
When the opportunity comes for us to pick new topics to talk about again. We'd be happy to oblige. Also, feel free to follow us on Instagram and Twitter, where we post our regular updates about changes in our schedule or things that we'll be covering. We have not been very active on them lately, I guess, because we've been both very busy, just adjusting to life and stuff. And we're also on YouTube, where we post highlights. One such highlight is an ASMR video where it's akin to if you still haven't been vaccinated, if you're still waiting for your priority category to come up, and you're yearning for the days of what it was like to be in a bar again, we have a video on our YouTube channel where it's us kind of running through the history of Sally Rooney, but then with bar sound effects in the back to create that ASMR atmospheric effect of overhearing two people preparing for their book report at a bar. So that is on our YouTube channel, The Rec Room with Mandy and Mio, Rec spelled REQ.
Hells yeah.
Mandy, you want to say anything else?
How are you guys liking this season so far?
Yeah, we want to hear more from you, please.
Let us know.
Let us know. Have heard. I mean, like, we wanna. One of the things that we wanted to do with like the summer sem was like really try to reach a wider audience by doing more kinds of art, more kinds of stories. So, I mean, it's good to be back in our home element, but like, let us know if if you're enjoying the way we're doing the films. If we're talking about if we're missing angles and like some of the songs we're talking about, and especially as we're moving along into the season, we're going to be talking about Fix, which is going to be it's a very different audience, I think, from the audience that we have here with something like The Idiot.
Correct.
Right.
So tell us. Let us know. We
know.
set our social media.
Yep.
Just let us know, guys. Comment, DM us.
Call us by our names.
Yeah. By our names.
Yeah.
Don't call us by your names. It's fine, guys.
No.
We don't have to go there.
Okay. I guess that's it from us then. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. And as always, my blood is going to be inside someone else's brain.
Okay. I was really like, I wonder what he's going to do.
The fuels, my thoughts will fuel someone else.
The way you're saying that too is so
I almost
weird.
wish that I opened the episode with that reading, because like it's such an out of context, like what is this book about? Like,
yeah, that's true. That's maybe one of the most Russian parts of this book.
Yeah, it's like, anyway, so that is The Idiot. As always, what a strange penetration.
Thanks for listening to The Rec Room. This episode was edited by me. Our artwork is by Mandy. Our theme song is 64 Sundays by Twin Musicom, which is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution License. Check out more of their music at www.twinmusicom.org. For more updates on The Rec Room, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Rec Room Pod. Rec spelled R-E-Q.